In 1095, in the town of Clermont, France, became an unlikely stage for a transformative moment in history. Pope Urban II stood before an eager crowd, raising his voice against the chaos-consuming Christendom. Deus vult, God wills it, he proclaimed, sparking a fervor that would send thousands of knights, nobles, and peasants on an unprecedented journey to reclaim the Holy Land. What inspired such an outpouring of devotion, ambition, and sacrifice? Well, this is the story of the First Crusade, a clash of faith, power, and destiny. By the 11th century, Europe was a patchwork of feudal territories locked in a perpetual struggle for dominance. The once mighty Carolingian Empire had dissolved, leaving behind a fractured landscape ruled by feuding lords and warlords. Yet, amidst the disarray, one institution towered above all others: the Roman Catholic Church. It provided spiritual guidance to a weary populace and exercised enormous political power. But even the church faced challenges. The investiture controversy, a bitter conflict over whether kings or the Pope had the authority to appoint bishops, had divided Christendom. Additionally, the rise of heretical movements threatened the church's unity from within. For Pope Urban II, the call to crusade was not just about Jerusalem, it was an opportunity to restore unity and reaffirm the church's supremacy. While Europe struggled with its internal conflicts, the Islamic world was experiencing its own upheavals. For centuries, Islamic empires had been the dominant force in the Mediterranean, with advances in science, medicine, and architecture outshining much of Europe. But the rise of the Seljuk Turks disrupted the balance. The Seljuks, who embraced Sunni Islam, carved out a vast empire that extended into Persia, the Levant, and Anatolia. Now, in 1071, their victory at the Battle of Manzikert shattered Byzantine control over much of Anatolia, leaving Constantinople dangerously exposed. Shortly thereafter, the Seljuks took Jerusalem, a city revered by Christians, Muslims, and Jews alike. Christian pilgrims faced increased dangers, and exaggerated tales of desecrated churches and massacres began to circulate in Europe. Whether fact or propaganda, these stories inflamed European imagination and set the stage for action. Byzantine Emperor Alexios Komnenos understood the stakes. The Seljuk advance threatened not only his empire, but also the survival of Eastern Christianity. In desperation, Alexios reached out to Pope Urban II, requesting military aid. Alexios' appeal was pragmatic. He sought seasoned soldiers to help reclaim Byzantine lands. But Urban saw an opportunity to transcend mere politics. For Urban, the crusade was a chance to heal the centuries-old schism between the Catholic and Orthodox churches. Since the Great Schism of 1054, tensions between the two branches of Christianity had simmered, but mutual survival could provide a common cause. Urban framed Alexios' request not as a Byzantine problem, but a crisis for all of Christendom. The Holy Land, he argued, belonged to the Christian faithful and not to infidels. His timing was impeccable. Europe was primed for a unifying mission. In November of 1095, Urban gathered bishops, nobles, and clergy at the Council of Clermont in France. His speech was a masterpiece of rhetoric, blending vivid descriptions of suffering with promises of spiritual rewards. He invoked the sanctity of Jerusalem and the duty of Christians to protect their fellow believers in the East. From the confines of Jerusalem and the city of Constantinople, he declared, "A grievous report has come. A race utterly alien to God has invaded the lands of our brothers in Christ. They've destroyed the churches and devastated the holy places." Urban's solution was both radical and ingenious. He called for a holy pilgrimage to liberate Jerusalem, framing the crusade as an act of piety. For those who participated, he promised complete remission of sins, a spiritual reward that deeply resonated in a society preoccupied with salvation. The crowd's reaction was immediate and fervent. Cries of "Deus vult" echoed across the field, and men rushed to sew crosses onto their clothing as a sign of their commitment. Urban's call spread quickly, carried by priests and preachers who fanned the flames of enthusiasm. Within months, thousands from all walks of life had pledged to take up the cross. Knights prepared their weapons and horses, while peasants left their fields, driven by hope for salvation or escape from poverty. The crusade attracted a diverse array of participants, each with unique motivations. For the deeply devout, the promise of spiritual redemption was irresistible. For knights, it offered a chance for glory and wealth in a land rumored to be flowing with riches. Younger sons of nobles, often left landless by inheritance laws, saw the crusade as a chance to claim territories of their own. Merchants, too, were eager to expand trade networks in the East. Even criminals were enticed by the chance to absolve their sins through service. This mix of faith, ambition, and desperation created a volatile moment that would soon sweep across Europe. The first wave of Crusaders, known as the People's Crusade, was both a testament to religious fervor and a cautionary tale of unpreparedness. Led by Peter the Hermit, a fiery preacher, this group consisted mainly of peasants, women, and children. Armed with little more than faith, they believed divine intervention would guide them to victory. Their journey was chaotic from the start. Lacking supplies and discipline, the People's Crusade resorted to looting as they moved through Europe. Tragically, their passage also saw the massacre of Jewish families in the Rhineland, a horrifying prelude to the violence that would come to define the Crusades. By the time they reached Byzantine territory, the ragtag group was a liability. Emperor Alexios provided them with transport across Bosporus, hoping they would move on quickly. Once in Seljuk-controlled Anatolia, the People's Crusade met its end. Ill-equipped and disorganized, they were slaughtered near Nicaea, leaving only a handful of survivors to tell the tale. While the People's Crusade was a disaster, the Princes Crusade marked the arrival of Europe's military elite. Leaders like Godfrey of Bouillon, Bohemond of Taranto, and Raymond IV of Toulouse commanded well-equipped armies. These were seasoned warriors motivated by a mix of piety and personal ambition. The journey to the Holy Land was arduous. The Crusaders faced treacherous terrain, extreme weather, and supply shortages. Relations with the Byzantines were strained as Emperor Alexios demanded oaths of loyalty in exchange for aid. Despite the shared goals, mistrust lingered between the East and West. By 1097, the Crusaders achieved their first major victory, capturing Nicaea with Byzantine support. They followed this with a triumph at the Battle of Dorylaeum, where their disciplined forces overcame a Seljuk ambush. These successes bolstered morale and reinforced the belief that God was guiding their mission. Antioch, a heavily fortified city, was the next major obstacle. The siege, which began in October of 1097, tested the Crusaders' endurance. Starvation, disease, and infighting had all plagued the camp, while the city's defenders showed no signs of surrender. The breakthrough came through treachery. An Armenian inside the city betrayed the garrison, opening a gate for the Crusaders to storm through. However, their victory was short-lived. A massive Muslim army, led by Kerboga of Mosul, arrived to retake Antioch. Surrounded and desperate, the Crusaders turned to faith for salvation. A monk claimed to have unearthed the Holy Lance, said to have pierced Christ's side. This relic became a rallying point, inspiring the Crusaders to launch a daring counterattack. Against overwhelming odds, they defeated Kerboga's forces, a victory that they attributed to divine intervention. By 1099, the Crusaders had reached the final stage of their journey. Their ranks were diminished and their spirits were tested, but Jerusalem lay within reach. As they marched southward, they encountered both hostility and support. Some local Christian communities aided the Crusaders, while others viewed them with suspicion. When the Crusaders arrived outside Jerusalem in June, the sight of the Holy City filled them with awe and determination. The Fatimid defenders had fortified the city, but the Crusaders were undeterred. The siege began in earnest, with the Crusaders constructing siege towers and battering rams. After weeks of relentless assault, they breached the city's walls on July 15th of 1099, and what followed was a brutal massacre. Men, women, and children all slaughtered as the Crusaders claimed Jerusalem for Christendom. For the Crusaders, the conquest of Jerusalem was the ultimate vindication of their mission. They established the Kingdom of Jerusalem, crowning Godfrey of Bouillon as its first ruler. But the bloodshed left a legacy of resentment that would fuel centuries of conflict between Christians and Muslims. The First Crusade was a defining moment in medieval history. It established new Crusader states and reinvigorated the Church's influence in Europe. It also facilitated cultural exchanges, introducing Europeans to Eastern ideas, goods, and technologies. However, the Crusades' legacy is deeply conflicted. While it was celebrated as a triumph of faith, it also revealed the darker side of human ambition and religious fervor. The violence it unleashed left scars that shaped East and West relations for generations. The First Crusade, it was more than a military campaign. It was a collision of faith, ambition, and human frailty. Was it truly a divine mission, or a testament to humanity's capacity for belief and brutality? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the past. History awaits.